welcome back to the Carbon Cardboard Podcast covering the Formula One sports card hobby. Got a quick episode for you today. We are going to recap the Baku Grand Prix, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix that just happened. And
well done, Baku.
Well done, Baku, as likely the cover art says on this. And Scott, it's been a while. We are going to bring back grid gainers.
That's right. And there's a I think pretty obvious grid gainer this past week in Baku. So excited to talk through it. Obviously, of course, without burying the lead, as you like to say, Carlos Sainz, right? Amazing job. But before we get into the grid gainers and talk through Carlos's amazing meteoric rise in the Williams outfit, we're going to talk through Azerbaijan Grand Prix Pick'em. So Not So Speed Racer 1 takes the win. This is actually his second time winning in the first 17 races with 49 points. The average was 37.6. So 49, very, very good score. And again, guys, now we're down to only 3 races left in the cumulative scoring. So in the top 16, and we've got it up on the screen for you here. We've got Branham Jim, Spyro Collects, the Iceman F1, C-Dent 15, Adam Hareen, Putty F1, F1 Ben, Dead Brick Cards, Not So Speed Racer, moving up to 6th place tie. Lando Cardrician, G Myers Cards, Max McDowell 6, Michelle F1 Fan, Fire and Ice Cards, EC87 GTI, and Justin Incident Cards there in 16th. Of course, the top 16 are the only ones that move on to the bracket stage. So now we've got the on the bubble kind of tracker of who is within striking distance to make it in. So MN Purple, Nico Tomicelli, Bambimon 91, Tricks Cards, Supermax, Super MSC, The Mensch's Bench, and Michael W. Rager are the kind of 7 folks who are within 20 points at least. They're actually within 12. So yeah, a lot of interesting stuff. 3 weeks left of these picks, and then only the top 16 make it in for a chance to win $1,000 in break credit. But pretty exciting. In terms of how the community voted, this is where we can kind of talk about the race a little bit, right? So Lando Norris does beat Isaac Hadjar. 98% of folks voted for that. Brian, we got to talk about this next one here.
Oh,
because 98% of voters were wrong in predicting Oscar Piastri over Alex Albon. And it's not like Albon had a good weekend, but talk me through your boy's weekend here. Where'd it go wrong?
It went from bad to worse. I don't know. It seemed like Scott, like the wind was an issue, and sometimes you just don't feel right sometimes, and hit the wall. Many people hit the wall. It's just,
especially in qualifying, right? I mean, gosh, it was chaos.
Like multiple red flags, lots
6
red flags.
Nuts.
And then on the opening lap, jumps the start, stalls, starts in the back at 20. And I think he just tried to be a little over aggressive and again hits the wall, causes the safety car, and that's it. And
crazy.
Fortunately or unfortunately, just based on how qualifying went for McLaren, they were not the class of the field this weekend, Scott. And I think I'm a McLaren fan. I've got a Lando shirt on right now. There we go. My
PR stunt.
Yeah, it is a PR stunt. My preference is to root for Oscar over Lando. And I immediately thought, Scott, like, this is it. This is how it's going to get even on points. Lando's going to find a way to get through the field, and he didn't.
No, yeah, like you said, the McLaren just didn't really have the pace. It's interesting because Baku is a place where overtaking is possible. Especially the long, very long start-finish straight, right, is where you see most opportunities. But really big headwind into that. So coming into turn 1, it was actually pretty tough to make overtakes. And then, listen, I think Lando, of course, terrible luck. He just seems to always have slow pit stops recently. And I think this time, I think it did cost him a couple places. Now, granted, he made some mistakes on his own, right? He was actually asleep. I think the team had to wake him up on the restart. Like, he was so far back from the car in front, and Leclerc just went past him on the restart, and that kind of set him back a little more. And then, of course, the pit stop, meant that he came out behind, that trio of Leclerc and Yuki and Lawson. He was able to get by Leclerc, whose tires started to fall away, but Lawson and Yuki, it just wasn't happening. Lawson was running a very trimmed out rear wing. They had very little downforce, so it was tough for Yuki and the Red Bull to get past him. And then Lando's just behind Yuki, who's got DRS, so you're stuck in that kind of mini DRS train. Couldn't get it done. So yeah, mitigated, damage mitigation for Oscar Piastri. Only loses 6 points to Lando in the championship, but loses 25 to the next person here, Max Verstappen, who 100% of folks voted for over Franco Colapinto. And it may be time to get your rally caps on for Max Verstappen, because if there's anyone that you'd put money on to somehow come back and win this championship that's not driving McLaren's, Max Verstappen in a Red Bull. So, we'll have to see, obviously, how Singapore and the next races goes. Max really needs to win out, which is tough, because we've seen in Monza, now Baku, the really trimmed out downforce Red Bull in the hands of Max is extremely potent. But we're going to Singapore, high downforce street circuit. That'll be the test. If the Red Bull is the best car there, this may get really crazy. But McLaren was dominant here last year. Lando won by a long ways. Got to run up and give his helmet a little tappy tap after the podium. So I think McLaren will be strong here again. So we'll have to see. But getting back to Azerbaijan, again, Max did win. 100% of folks took him. Yuki Tsunoda over Lance Stroll, 74% took him. He had his best finish with Red Bull, 6th place. Still behind Lawson, but 6th place. George Russell, 98% over Bortoleto. George Russell was sick over the weekend, but still managed to end up finishing P2. So really, really good weekend, honestly, by Russell. Decent job in qualifying and then a great job in the race. Kimi Antonelli bouncing back a bit as well here. He's had some weak races recently, so great to see Kimi doing a good job. Didn't quite make it onto the podium, but a very respectable P4, and 67% of the folks voted for him over Alonso, and they got it right. 98% took Leclerc over Ocon. Leclerc, not an amazing race. I was actually very surprised.
He had a chance early.
He did. And he did a decent job early on, but then just, seemed to fall away, couldn't really make the medium tires work ultimately when he was on those. And Lewis, I was surprised to see Lewis come back and pass Leclerc and be the one who had the better overall race pace on the day. But yeah, I think, really good sign for Lewis. He on merit legitimately outraced Leclerc in Baku, and Baku is normally a Leclerc circuit, and not one that Hamilton's ever really done well at over his storied career. It's not one of his best tracks, so promising for Lewis. We'll have to see how he goes in Singapore. But so 95% of folks took Lewis, and while he did beat Leclerc, he did not beat Liam Lawson. So 5% of the community voted for Lawson, got that right. And then, of course, the big one, which we're going to talk about here in a moment, Carlos Sainz. 57% of the folks took him over Behrman, which is a respectable shout. But I am certain that very few people would have picked him for a podium, and that's where he ended, on the podium. Carlos Sainz. This is Williams' first ever podium in the James Vowles era. And
first since George Russell.
That's right. And, it's also crazy because Albon's had such a good year, P7, P8 in the drivers, and just absolutely, manhandling Sainz as far as points goes. But in qualifying, they actually went into Azerbaijan tied in qualifying, head to head, 8-8. And now Sainz actually has that advantage, 9-8, picks up a huge amount of points, catapults him up. Also, now puts Williams way up there, right? Like, they are solidly in fifth. It's going to be very hard for, any team to upend them and pass them. They're probably going to be chilling in fifth. But yeah, so great weekend for Williams. And then, of course, the last one here, Nico Hulkenberg, 54% of the vote, did get the win over Pierre Gasly.
And we could just, any noteworthy driver standing updates here, Scott? We
Yeah,
don't need to go
so
through all
the
of them.
driver standings, not too much has changed. The only thing I'm going to touch on here is that, again, so similarly to the way we're doing the pick'em bracket, we're also doing a driver standings bracket. And so what that means is after 20 races, the bottom 4 are essentially going to be like eliminated from, bracket playoff contention. We're kind of treating this like an individual driver championship, where at the end of the season it will come down to 2 drivers against each other in Abu Dhabi, and whoever takes it, winner takes all. But yeah, so right now the bottom 4 is Lance Stroll, Janko Kalapuan, Fernando Alonso, and then it's Esteban Ocon, Oliver Behrman, Gabriel Bortoleto, and Gasly all tied at 6 and 11. So it's gonna be really close to see kind of who makes it into the top 16. But yeah, Max all alone in first at 16 and 1. Only has 1 loss, and it was during his DNF. So pretty crazy.
Crazy. Yeah, Aston Martin and Haas have been very up and down. And Alpine right there too. So these things do have a way
struggling.
These things do have kind of a way of evening themselves out over the course of a season here. All right. Well, Scott, you mentioned it at the top, and it is with our pleasure that we're able to bring back grid gainers.
Grid gainers, the gaining on the grid.
You didn't even have to use AI for that. Like, that's amazing.
Look at that. Send me my check. So yeah, Carlos Sainz, obviously driving now for Williams. He's been with quite a few teams. So if you remember, he was actually Max Verstappen's teammate. They both came in 2015 with Toro Rosso. And since then, Carlos has had a few stops. He went over to Renault, went to McLaren. That's where you first see his cards in McLaren from his, 2019, 2020 seasons. And then, of course, moved over to Ferrari. So you've got some cards to choose from. He's obviously in the 2020 series. So, of course, for me, and your very similar mindset here, the flow chart, as we like to say.
Flow chart says 2020.
2020 Sapphire PSA 10 portrait of Carlos Sainz. And I will say, this card has actually gone up significantly in value. I remember buying some of these and just looking at comps of a few of these back in the day, months and months ago, maybe like 3 or 4 months ago, and you could get these for 40, $50. They have pretty much doubled in price since then. And this is even before the podium. And I think a lot of it's just people are really, realizing 2020, especially in a PSA 10 portrait, like these are cards that are going to be good. They're liquid. And yeah, so my kind of, liquid type card, if you're looking for a little Carlos Sainz, something to have for your collection, I like a PSA 10 Sapphire portrait. Get him in his McLaren threads. It's his pseudo rookie card, first Topps printed license card. So I like that one. And then for my grail, I'm actually going with the rose gold helmet collection, which was sold on eBay not that long ago. And I actually really wanted this card. I was thinking about using it for, potentially a pit lane access chaser or something like that. Didn't end up winning it. Got a little bit out of my reach. And then I actually was thinking about putting in a last bid, but missed the timer. I was handling Seb at the time. So, but yeah, really, really good card. I mean, this sold for, I think it was right around $1,500, $1,600, which to me, I think is a great buy. Love the helmet collection. I think the rose gold, very subtle, but the logo really rings through. I mean, if you've got it, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see, the picture of the signs. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And I love it in his Ferrari threads. I mean, I know he started with McLaren as far as the cards are concerned, and he's with Williams now. But gosh, it's tough to pass down some Ferrari red. So that's where I'm at with Carlos. But would love to hear what you would think here in terms of what your grid gainer is.
Well, just quickly on Sainz, I know we've talked about a lot this season on the podcast here about our affinity for Williams, and we thought that there was going to be potentially days like this. So kudos to the team, kudos to James Vowles for getting this done. Scott, on your bingo card at the beginning of this season, would you have predicted that Carlos Sainz would have a podium in a feature race with Williams before Lewis Hamilton? I know Lewis Hamilton does have the sprint win, but
yeah, so it's funny because this is obviously the comparison everyone's been making, and I think it makes sense, right? Because Lewis replaced Sainz at Ferrari, so of course these comparisons are going to come up. And no, absolutely not. I wouldn't have. I also, if you had told me, listen, you can take Nico Hulkenberg, Carlos Sainz, and Isaac Hadjar, all three of them, versus Lewis Hamilton, who do you think will have more podiums? Lewis Hamilton or the three of those combined? I would have said, oh, Lewis Hamilton for sure. And yeah, we've
that would have
seen
been
how
easy money.
wrong that has turned out to be, because that is a 3-0 on the side of not Lewis Hamilton. So like I said, I think we have seen some improvements from Lewis, so maybe he'll sneak in a podium here towards the end of the season. But yeah, really good job by Sainz. Again, also, Albon's been doing good all year, but Sainz is the one that manages to pick up the podium. So great for him. I think it's going to be a huge confidence booster for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and this is why they went out and got a driver like him.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, their trajectory is looking up with the new regulations starting next season. All right, Scott, again, another driver that we have talked about quite a bit this season is Mr. George Russell. Just continues to capitalize when things go awry in a race, and he is just always there. I mean, now with Oscar's DNF, he's the only driver on the grid that does not have a DNF this year,
Wow.
Mr. Russell. And also Mr. Consistent, very sick during this race. So again, it makes the P2 even more special. I mean, we would have loved for Sainz to hold that, but in the Williams versus the Mercedes, we'll take a P3.
It's like the Michael Jordan Game 6, the fever game or whatever it is, where he had 103 fever or something, dropped like 60 points. It's George Russell.
And again, sound like a broken record here, but we have to make mention of this because his cards are just, there's not financial advice. They're ripe for an opportunity, and there's probably better than a coin flip chance next season, Scott, that Mercedes may actually have the best car. And Toto has not solidified the driver lineup, but if you read the tea leaves, it does seem like it's going to be Russell and it's going to be Kimi Antonelli again next year. If you thought the run up on Oscar cards was great when you have a new title contender there, I mean, Russell could be right there as well in contention for the WDC, the World Driver Championship.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they definitely sounds like they're certainly going to have the class of the field power unit. So then it just comes down to, okay, so Alpine, Williams, Mercedes, and McLaren all have the same power unit next year. Who wins out? Hey, I think the combination of George Russell and Mercedes can definitely throw your hat in the ring. So
the flow chart, Scott, says 2020. Again, I chose to keep with Sapphire here, and we've got on screen a PSA 10 Sapphire SP, or AKA the image variation, AKA the IV. Currently 151 of these as a pop 10. Sapphire is a lot easier to gem these than the chrome, the base refractors, which there's only 300 of. I think there's about about 1,100 of the IVs. So you got about, between all the different grading companies, they've probably anywhere from 25 to 30% of them have been graded. And obviously that's just the ones that have gemmed across the board. So definitely something that's going to be very liquid, and I think could see, if you're in for a couple, gosh, I haven't even looked at these. I actually just picked up a PSA 8 of the base refractor the other day from Leahi, because I can say their name all the time. It's like $125 for a PSA 8. There's only 300 in the world. Like,
Wow.
criminally undervalued. So
All right.
again, not financial advice. For a Grail, you can't really go wrong with Dynasty Scott 2024 glove patch, aqua, Puma, like just Russell's
Yeah.
signature hasn't been the best since he first came in. It's getting a little bit sloppier. As somebody that
Yeah.
preps cards for PSA, it's usually hard to actually grade his auto as well because it's just seems to be a scribble
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it's turned into like the Esteban Ocon kind of thing,
Esteban Ocon
you know?
cannot sign on a sticker. It's always off.
Oh, too big. Yeah. Yeah, but like
And he
I'm
signed with a Sharpie, like a thick Sharpie a couple years ago too. Like
well,
just like
that's
you
probably not his fault, right? Like you got to imagine like you're being handed something. So somebody like that's I'm not necessarily going to put it on tops, but somebody
eh,
messed up there. I mean, come on. Drivers just sitting down and they're going to sign what they sign with what they're given. It's not like they gave him that and he's like, "You know what? No, I brought my own Sharpie from home." Well, like
maybe Yuki
but
did. I don't know.
but yeah, Russell, it is interesting because like in 2020, he almost wrote out like Russell. And
Mhm.
now it's just this GR maybe? I don't even really know. But yeah, it's what
It's
he
like he
what he does
almost
now. This
overlays
one
his
is
first name.
actually decent,
It's decent. It's not
this
it's
auto
usually ends up being
on
his
screen.
issue, and we're not here to critique how people sign their names, but when you're looking at sending these to PSA, if you decide to, take these out of the Topps Dynasty, mags, the cases here, and you grade them, if it's streaky or the pen's picked up, in any way, that those will not gem, you're better off just grading the card at that point,
Yep.
but we're not here to debate whether you should leave
Yeah.
these as is or grade dynasty cards, but just a phenomenal looking card. Be very happy to
Yeah.
add this to your
Th-
collection.
that's a beautiful one. And it's funny because we sold one actually that came through earlier, and now we have the other one. So they're 2 out of 2. We sold the first one. Now we've got the second one. I love this card too because I love George Russell's gloves and the color and how it matches the Petronas.
Mhm.
Kind of teal aqua that Mercedes uses because it ends up like matching the card with that color. And Lewis's older the neon yellow definitely pops, but so does this, and it
Mm.
matches too, which I really really like. So yeah, gorgeous card, and would be a beautiful pickup for any George Russell fan.
All right. Again, episode on the shorter side here. Hopefully, you appreciated the return to grid gainers. We'll kind of sprinkle this in, especially when there's some results that definitely we feel like are going to move the market and in a good way. And both of the outlook for both drivers are pretty good going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, this has been a little bite size carbon cardboard podcast, and the next one might be even bite sizier. But
That's the term.
we're trying to do what we do. I'm going on vacation, so we gotta get it in when we can. So appreciate you all, and guys, you know what time it is? It's time to collect your cardboard and make sure you keep it carbon.